Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2023 Safe Routes to School Application Overview webinar. My name is Paula Hyman from the Ohio LTAP Center, and I'll be your technical support for today's webinar. Just a couple of housekeeping items. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please put those into the questions pod, and our presenter will address those throughout the presentation. There is one item available to download in the handout section, and if for some reason you're unable to get that handout, just put your email in the questions pod and I'll send it to you directly. All documents will be emailed after the completion of the webinar to the group, and the webinar is being recorded. Providing that the recording is successful, the YouTube link will be emailed to all participants and uploaded to our LTAP website. I want to thank you in advance for that and for your participation today. And I'll pass things off to Ms. Kate Harley, Safe Routes to School and Active Transportation Manager here with ODOT. Kate.
Great. Thanks so much, Paula. Thanks for everyone for joining today. I am going to provide an overview of ODOT's Safe Routes to School program and specifically talk about everything you need to know about the upcoming application. So over the next hour, we're just going to talk about Safe Routes to School, talk about funding. I'm going to go over eligibility for the Safe Routes to School program. I'm going to talk about the details of each of the applications, including our infrastructure application, non-infrastructure application, and the school travel plan development assistance application. I'm also going to talk about the things that will be required as part of those applications. So you can think about pulling these things together over the coming months. I'll also talk about scoring, and then I'll wrap up with a few Safe Routes to School and active transportation related resources. What you see on the screen on the right side is just a screenshot of our updated application guidance. This is available online, and the content that I'm covering in today's webinar largely follows this guide. This is really the most comprehensive resource for anything and everything you need to know about the Safe Routes to School application. Before we really dive in, I do just want to make a comment about Safe Routes to School more globally. So, in general, Safe Routes to School is not a term that's owned by ODOT. Safe Routes to School is really an approach that promotes walking and biking to school through infrastructure improvements, through enforcement tools, safety, and incentives that encourage students to walk and bike to school. In general, these types of initiatives have a lot of benefits. They reduce traffic around schools, they improve safety, air quality, increase levels of physical activity for students. So there's a lot of different organizations and partners across Ohio and across the globe who work on Safe Routes to School, who have Safe Routes to School programs, whether or not they, specifically receive funding from, ODOT Safe Routes to School funding program. So lots of reasons to get involved with Safe Routes to School. And then a quick comment about funding as well. This is just a chart showing a lot of the different types of federal and state funding that flows to ODOT, and then below that, how we divvy up this funding into a variety of funding programs. What I've shown below in the orange buckets are really what we consider to be some of the largest funding programs available through ODOT for standalone bicycle and pedestrian projects. So from left to right, those orange buckets are our MPO and large cities program. So that's federal money that flows from ODOT through MPOs, our highway safety improvement program, our transportation alternatives program, which funds projects outside of MPO areas, and then what we are here to talk about today, which is our Safe Routes to School program. So at a high level, ODOT allocates $5 million annually to this Safe Routes to School program. This represents an increase from previous years. The program was previously funded at $4 million annually. So starting this fiscal year, the program will be receiving $5 million. At its core, the Safe Routes to School funding the Safe Routes to School program provides funding to facilitate the planning, development, and implementation of projects and activities that enable and encourage K-12 students, including those with disabilities, to walk or bike to school. So everything that we do with Safe Routes to School funding relates to this goal. This also represents a shift from previous years. We have expanded the audience of our program to include K through 12. Whereas in previous years, we have focused our efforts and projects around schools that K through 8 students attended, but moving forward, projects are eligible if they impact K through 12 students. The program provides funding for both infrastructure projects as well as non-infrastructure projects, things like education and programming and planning as well. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about eligibility, so how to become eligible to apply for project funding through the Safe Routes to School program. There are some requirements in order to be eligible to apply. First and foremost, projects have to serve the stated purpose of the Safe Routes to School program, which I just went over. Number two, projects have to be priorities that are identified within a plan. Oops. That plan needs to be updated within the past 5 years. It needs to engage school stakeholders and the community. It needs to be comprehensive in that it includes both infrastructure recommendations and non-infrastructure recommendations. And the plan needs to be approved by your ODOT District Safe Routes to School coordinator, which is a simple process of just emailing them the plan seeking approval. And they will be looking for these bullet points. So these qualifying plans can be a variety of plans. A variety of plans can check those boxes to make you eligible, whether that's a local comprehensive plan that identifies bicycle and pedestrian projects, a long-range transportation plan, a school travel plan, which is really a plan that's dedicated to understanding and meeting the needs of kids walking and biking to school, and for which ODOT has guidance and templates for developing. An active transportation plan, which is broader, looking at walking and biking needs across the community, which we also have guidance and a template for, or something else that's equivalent. Maybe bicycle and pedestrian plan is what you call it, or if it's just a pedestrian plan or just a bicycle plan, any of those types of plans have the opportunity to make you eligible as long as you check the boxes outlined in number 2. There's 2 more requirements. These can potentially be supplemented to plans if they aren't already integrated into it. So this includes a 2-mile radius map. 2-mile radius maps basically show where students live in proximity to the school that they attend. And importantly, this helps us understand the number and percentage of students that live within different radiuses of school, like a quarter mile, half mile, 1 mile, or 2 mile. We generally recommend, if you're seeking project funding through ODOT Safe Routes to School program, we recommend that you have about 50% or more of students that live within 2 miles of school. Something that's new this year, and you'll see this throughout the guidance, is we've also included some just raw numbers, which could be used as an alternative way to kind of meet that more competitive threshold. So 50% or more, or 250 or more students. There's some flexibility here. This is to be competitive. You can still put in an application if you're not quite hitting these numbers, and build your case for why the project is going to impact students walking and biking. I think a really good example of this is for communities that have not as much density around schools. If they're seeking funding to support the development of programs like remote drop-off, those types of programs would be able to impact students kind of regardless of that 2-mile radius. So that might be an example of how you could still engage with the program without that sort of higher student density. And then the last thing that you need is a little bit of data, an estimated walking and biking rate, as well as input from parents or caregivers. You can collect this data however you want to. ODOT hosts 2 surveys that you can just use and promote if you'd like to. So we host an ODOT parent/caregiver survey, and we also host a student travel tally survey. So by hosting this, I mean we have these online. Communities can be added to the drop-down, and you can promote those links. And when you're done promoting them, ODOT will send you the raw data as well as an analysis of the data and some other tools to help you sort of evaluate further. So that's an option. But at the end of the day, again, what you need to document is current rates of walking and biking and feedback from parents or caregivers about having their kids walking back to school. What are the challenges? Are you supportive of it? Do they ask permission to do it? What are your concerns? Things like that. And these could also, this type of information could also be collected through surveys or focus groups or interviews. You could collect this data in a variety of ways. So those are the main ways to be eligible. I'll just show you those 1 and 2 again, and then 3 and 4. Okay, so brief overview of our upcoming application cycle. It's going to look fairly similar to those of you who've applied for Safe Routes to School in the past. It's an online application. We facilitate this through FormStack. The application window is going to be early January through that first Friday in March, which is March 3rd next year. Communities or applicants can apply for infrastructure projects or non-infrastructure projects or both. And they also can apply for school travel plan development assistance at that time. You know, we certainly encourage you to consider applying for both types of projects. You know, we really see value in approaching Safe Routes to Schools through both methods, you know, building and constructing projects to better connect students, as well as developing programming and education and, you know, incentives and stuff like that to for walking and biking to school. Something I also want to bring to your attention, and I'll touch on this again later, but we are opening up the application for school travel plan development assistance right now, and we are soliciting those applications through December 9th of this year. We really encourage you, if you're interested in getting assistance with developing a school travel plan, we really encourage you to submit that early so that those plans can get started sometime early next year. However, we will still accept school travel plan development requests during the normal application window between January and March. The next sort of step is we'll do some invite-only project presentations. These typically take place in April, and then we aim to send the notice of awards out to locals by early June. Okay. I'm going to do a quick run through of each of the different applications. So starting with our infrastructure application, these can be projects within 2 miles of schools that include kids in grades K through 12. The project cap this year is $500,000. This represents a small increase from previous years. Previously, it was $400,000. You know, examples include sidewalks, bicycle facilities, shared use paths, as well as enhanced crossings, things like high visibility crosswalks, pedestrian countdown timers, curb bump outs, raised crosswalks, rectangular rapid flashing beacons, pedestrian hybrid beacons. These are all examples of, you know, facilities that would serve students in getting to school safely and comfortably. Construction funding is available in fiscal year 2026. Funding is available in prior fiscal years for all other phases of project development. Infrastructure projects have to be sponsored by the local jurisdiction that has the maintenance authority over that roadway. So typically this would be the city, the village, perhaps the township or the county whoever is in charge of maintaining, the roadway which is going to be impacted, they are the ones who should be the applicant and the ones that will be the local project sponsor. So they'll be the ones that ODOT, goes into an agreement with on the project. Something that's unique about Safe Routes to School program funding is we can reimburse for up to 100% of eligible costs. So there are no local match requirements for Safe Routes to School. And we also provide this funding for all phases of project development, from engineering, design, right-of-way, construction, and construction engineering. And again, this application is soliciting projects that can be constructed in fiscal year 2026. For those of you interested in applying for an infrastructure project, these are the types of required attachments that you'll want to be compiling over the next few months. So all of these items need to be attached to the application when you go to submit them. This includes the plan that's making you eligible for the program. So this would be a plan that you've sent to your district Safe Routes to School coordinator. They've said, yep, good to go, you can apply. And we should be able to see where your project is in this plan. You'll need to get a letter of support from your MPO or RTPO if you fall within their jurisdiction, so a metropolitan planning organization or a regional transportation planning organization. You'll need to submit a project countermeasure map. So we want to see where your project is on a map, understand what's involved, a photo, so a current photo of existing conditions, a certified cost estimate. So this is a cost estimate that'll be stamped by an engineer. It'll include project phases, contingency, and inflation. And then along with that, we will also have you submit a budget breakdown. And I have an example of this in the guide. I forgot to put it on the slide, but this is just basically a way for us to understand how much funding you are requesting for each phase by fiscal year. And it's also a way where you can let us know where there might be other financial contributions that are made to the project. So for some people, some communities will just request construction funding from ODOT. They will do the design of the project in-house locally, and then they will request maybe the full amount of funding just for the construction phase. So that's how we would sort of understand that, is by looking at that budget breakdown to see which projects have what amount of funding requested from the ODOT Safe Routes to School program. You'll have to attach a 2-mile student radius map, proof of progress, which is just some sort of something that's happened that indicates that your community is working to advance Safe Routes to School, whether that's meeting minutes because you guys have been talking about Safe Routes to School and events that are coming up, or photos of a walk to school day, or examples of some other school-related assembly related to walking and biking to school, some sort of proof that your community is organizing around Safe Routes to School. And then finally, you'll have to do a signed ordinance. So be thinking about that soon, because I know that can take a couple readings to get signed, but you'll need to attach a signed ordinance to the application. If you're really in crunch time and you can't get the ordinance signed in time, you can submit a draft ordinance, but you'll need to follow up with a signed ordinance really as soon as possible, and we will not award any projects without those signed ordinances. So here's a quick look at our scoring rubric for infrastructure projects. Again, this is included in the full guidance, but just to give you a sense of the things that we're scoring you on, we are looking at network, how your project improves network connectivity, how it improves safety, how it's addressing need, how it's going to have an impact on trips, and then also demonstrating a strong community commitment. So these are all of the main things that we're looking at. A couple of things have changed. Again, for those of you who are really familiar with this, it might even be worth sort of self-scoring yourselves, but there are a couple of changes that we've made. We have a little bit less points assigned to crashes that have occurred. So most of that safety score relates to the narrative that you provide around safety. why is your project either addressing a safety issue, or why is it going to ensure, safer options moving forward? Are you installing proven safety countermeasures? Building that case, that compelling case around how this is going to improve or ensure safety. On the right side, we have dropped down the percentage of students that are currently walking and biking to get full points to only 30%. This was originally 70%, so you'll see some of these thresholds have dropped a little bit. 30% walking and biking is still quite a high rate of walking and biking. In Ohio, that state average is about 13%. So you'll see that you'll be able to receive full points for over 30%. And then the other edits that we made relate to the potential for walking and biking trips. So previously you would have received 0 points if less than 50% of students lived within 2 miles. Now we have a variety of different points assigned to different tiers that kind of allows projects that are still potentially impacting hundreds of kids to have scores that reflect that. So those are just a couple changes. So moving on to, okay, let me check the questions. Okay. I'll come back to that one. The next application is for non-infrastructure. So non-infrastructure projects, these include activities that improve safety or that encourage walking and biking to school, things like education, encouragement, enforcement, or evaluation. ODOT provides this type of funding to really develop, kind of initiate and implement projects that are sustainable. The project cap for this is $60,000 per year. And new this year, we're actually allowing and encouraging 2-year projects, if that's a good fit for your community. A couple examples of non-infrastructure projects could be developing a walking school bus program or a walking Wednesday program, hosting bike rodeos, purchasing crossing guard program supplies, or doing a driver safety campaign. Also new this year, we are allowing we're allowing any applicant to apply for up to $60,000 per year. We do still have some recommended project limits that are based on the number of schools that would be impacted by the project. And in general, obviously, the amount that's requested should really reflect the expected student impact. So again, overall, anybody can apply for up to $60,000 for 1 year, and has the opportunity to build their case for why they will be able to, really maximize their student impact. But the recommended project limits you see are on the screen. 1 to 3 schools, we recommend about $20,000 for 1 year, or $40,000 for 2. For 4 to 9 schools, up to $40,000 for 1 year, or $80,000 for 2. And then for 10 or more schools, up to $60,000 for 1 year, or $120,000 for 2 years. And so again, you could potentially apply, in one application round for 2 years worth of funding to execute a 2-year work plan. So you could apply for $120,000, and your budget would include the items and time that you need to execute that work over 2 years. So that's new this year. Non-infrastructure funding is available in fiscal year 2024, so it's available pretty immediately after July 1 of next year. Project sponsors have to be political subdivisions, so this could be cities, villages, townships, counties, school districts, health districts, or parks districts. We also allow other nonprofit organizations who, have a tie to a jurisdiction or a school to be the applicant as well. We do, to some extent, prefer to provide this funding to local government agencies where we can be building capacity for this work and institutionalizing this work. But we do allow applicants to be nonprofit organizations in circumstances where that is a better fit for the community. And that's going to work the best for that area. ODOT can reimburse for up to 100% of eligible costs. So again, no local match. And funding is intended to develop and implement plans, programs, policies, and environments that are sustainable past the availability of Safe Routes to School funding. And I'll talk a little bit more about this within eligibility and non-eligibility. So in order to apply for non-infrastructure, these are the attachments that you'll need. So again, you'll need that plan that points out where this has been identified. You'll need a cost estimate, so just a detailed budget on what it is you're spending your money on and how much it costs. The 2-mile student radius maps, proof of progress. In this case, if the applicant is not the school, you have to have a letter of support from the school district for which you're going to be working with their students. So even if you're the local government, even if you're the health district or a parks district or whatever, if you're the nonprofit organization, you will have to have a letter of support from the schools that you're going to be working with. And then again, this signed ordinance. Another quick look at scoring. This is, again, all outlined in the guide. It looks fairly similar to the infrastructure scoring. Similar changes have been made with this like 30% threshold, and then including some additional points below the 50% within 2 miles. For non-infrastructure, we also dropped the value of total points for the current students, like the current rates of walking and biking, because from a non-infrastructure perspective, we're really most interested in understanding the potential for increasing. So that's where most of those points are within trips. Okay, so let me talk just briefly about ineligible activities. So as you're thinking about these projects, there's a ton of flexibility in what you can do, and a lot of the lists and ideas that we have included within the guidance they're not exhaustive lists. They're just like common projects that we typically fund. But there are a few things that we consider to be ineligible, and that includes, first of all, any project that does not specifically relate to enabling or encouraging walking and biking to school. We don't provide funding for food or beverages or food or beverage gift cards. We don't provide funding for bicycles that are going to be given away to people. We don't fund giveaways that have no safety or educational value. We are unable to provide reimbursement for reoccurring costs. So some examples of this are ongoing funding for programs that are the same each year. For example, like paying for crossing guard salaries is something that we couldn't do. Reoccurring program coordinator salaries could not continue to be funded at 100% if they're going to be delivering the same amount of the same programs to the same schools. If you are expanding your programming, if you are expanding the programming to new schools, that could be eligible for 100% funding. But if it's more of a continuation of programs, then you would have to demonstrate local investment within any sort of next application. Projects whose only purpose is to upgrade curb ramps to be ADA compliant are ineligible. Projects whose only purpose is to replace or upgrade school zone signage is ineligible. And of course, infrastructure projects have to be ADA compliant. So they need to be ADA compliant, but you can't submit for a project whose only purpose is to upgrade curb ramps to be ADA compliant. There's also a couple of things that are newly eligible. So in the past, we haven't provided funding for bicycles at all. Bicycles are now eligible as long as they are part of a training related purpose. So if you have a plan that relates to facilitating bicycle training on some sort of routine basis, you could include bicycles within your budget, and we could consider funding those. The other thing that I have outlined as an idea within the guide is also materials and staff time for quick build projects. Quick build projects are projects that we anticipate lasting approximately 1 to 3 years. So not to be confused with demonstration projects, which is kind of another similar term, but typically has a shorter lifespan. Typically, a demonstration project is maybe a day up to like a season, whereas quick build projects would be a little bit more permanent. You know, they would need to be updated or upgraded to something more permanent after a year or so, but in general, these projects might last 1 to 3 years. This is an example that I pulled from the city of Cincinnati. They just installed this summer, this curb extension, painted curb extension and bollards to improve a crosswalk. Again, this would be within non-infrastructure, so you'd still have that $60,000 cap. These projects would need to be delivered within 2 years, and you could potentially get funding for the materials that you need to do the project, as well as staff time, like an engineer to develop some simple plan sets. And then the last application is school travel plan development assistance. So ODOT provides some limited assistance for planning. The bulk of the Safe Routes to School program funds go towards funding local Safe Routes to School projects, whether mostly infrastructure and then also some non-infrastructure. So this is quite competitive, but we know that there's value in providing planning assistance to those who are unable to develop plans themselves. So this is actually open right now. These requests are due December 9th, so in a couple months, so that we can get started on these plans earlier in 2023, which will give you more time to develop a plan and get your projects together for the 2024 Safe Routes to School application. However, we will also accept these requests due again on March 3rd. There's a couple ways that you can get assistance. You can request consultant assistance, which means ODOT will use one of our task order consultants to help you develop a school travel plan. So we already have an agreement with these folks. We would pay them directly for their work. So the benefit to you is you don't have to hire somebody, you don't have to front any money. You are just assigned a project manager to help you with the development of a school travel plan. But you can also choose to seek reimbursement for planning as well. So if you want to hire a consultant or some other organization to support you in developing a school travel plan, you can apply for that as well. And then you would just invoice ODOT on some sort of schedule, either quarterly or every 6 months for the cost of the work. We recommend, if you are seeking assistance for the development of a school travel plan, we typically recommend that this plan includes multiple schools. I think in general, we often think if you're just developing a school travel plan for one school, that's something that you could likely tackle as a community with partners. That's not always the case for everybody. So if you don't feel like that's your situation and you're looking for assistance, you can absolutely put in an application. But I will say, I think there's a little bit more of an inclination to provide this assistance to plans that are going to include multiple schools. Okay, so this should say school travel plan applications will require. So these are the attachments you would include. If you are seeking reimbursement, you would need to include a cost estimate for the work, some sort of budget that lets us know what the cost of doing these different tasks is going to be. You'll include data on your free and reduced lunch, for the schools that you want to work with. You'll include student address data for the schools you want to do a plan for. And then you'll also need to get a letter of support from your MPO or RTPO, if applicable, as well as the local government, as well as the school district. So there are 3 letters of support that are needed from your regional planning organization, if you have one, from the local government, and from the school district. And then finally, that signed ordinance. The scoring will look somewhat familiar. Again, we're still looking at these same major buckets. The only thing that's really different about the school travel plan is we put all 20 points within like the trip section for the potential to impact students walking and biking. So there's really there's no weight given to students that are currently walking and biking. It's really all about what is the potential to allow and enable kids to walk and bike to school. Okay, so a question that came in is about finding the current school travel plan assistance application, that they were having trouble finding it on the web. I'm about to go over exactly where to locate all of this information on the web, and I can also put some links in the chat potentially as well. Okay. So here are like the core Safe Routes to School resources and websites that you need to be aware of. This hyperlink here will take you to kind of our base Safe Routes to School page. It looks like this. You can click on this card, apply for Safe Routes to School funding, and then you'll see a few other cards. If you click on Safe Routes to School guidance, that's where you're going to get to this document that I've been talking about for the last 40 minutes. And if you want to get to the actual links, you'll click on this one, which says Safe Routes to School application links. And when you click on that, you'll only see one application is listed right now, Safe Routes to School, School Travel Plan Development Request. So you can click on that, it's live. You can submit that at any point before close of business December 9th. This page is also where you will see these sample ordinances. So if you're looking for infrastructure, non-infrastructure, or a school travel plan ordinance, which they'll look different if you are requesting a consultant or whether you're hiring someone yourself. But those ordinances are also listed. You'll also, on all of the Safe Routes to School pages, you'll see my contact information, and you'll also see this button for the Safe Routes to School district contacts. Couple other major resources that we provide as an agency. We can develop 2-mile radius maps for you. So for some communities, you might be able to develop these in-house if you have some GIS staff, or if you're like an MPO or RTPO, potentially might be able to help you develop these if they have GIS staff. Otherwise, ODOT's happy to make these for you, but we do request that you send us the data in a very specific format. So it needs to be an Excel document with 5 different columns of data: the school, the grade of the student, their address, city, zip code, and we do not accept any data that has student names. We also have some toolkits available if they're helpful to you. We have toolkits on infrastructure as well as non-infrastructure ideas. We also have a variety of guides and templates to help you from a planning perspective. So we host an active transportation plan development guide and template. Be sure to check out some of the supplemental resources that you would need to compile with this in order to be eligible for Safe Routes to School. That would be student travel tallies and parent surveys and 2-mile radius maps. And then of course we have our school travel plan guidelines and template, which you can download. This is a Word document. Both of them are Word documents, so really easy to plug and play information. For those of you who want some assistance but may not need to apply for like full-blown consultant assistance, you can request a community workshop at any time. These are 4 to 6 hour workshops where we come out and help you convene stakeholders to talk about creating a school travel plan, how to get started on that, who does what, how that's going to work, or creating an active transportation plan. We can also come out and help you conduct a walk audit and develop a report with findings. And then a couple other Safe Routes to School related trainings that we provide are a crossing guard training, girls in gear, and walking school bus training. So if these interest you, you can apply at any time using this form stack link. For those of you who have feedback about the Active Transportation Academy, we actually have a live survey right now where we're soliciting feedback. And if you have ideas on trainings that you'd like to see, you could provide that information to us right now. So I anticipate that being open for several more weeks, probably through the end of November. If you have any thoughts, we'd love to hear from you. And then just in general, as you think about next steps, it's late October right now. You should definitely think about talking to your district Safe Routes to School coordinator. If you have project ideas or you're thinking about applying, this is, really important to get on their radar. Make sure that you have an eligible plan. Feel free to share ideas with them and get their feedback on what they think might be most competitive or, most compelling for us. We really want to help communities get the best application they can through the door. So we're very eager to work with you, to hear from you. And as you get closer to developing an actual application, these coordinators can help to review things like cost estimates, make sure that things look right, make sure that they don't have any red flags about your application, so that that can all be taken care of before it really, comes in. Definitely take some time to review this 2023 application guidance document. Like I said, everything you need to know should be in that document. There's even an appendix that includes the actual application questions. So even though all of the applications aren't open right now, you have access to the questions that we're going to ask you because they're all in the appendix of that document. So all the information is out there. The scoring rubric information is there. But if you have questions, obviously let us know. If you're thinking about applying for school travel planning assistance, please do so by December 9th. And then, the final step would be to apply for any project funding that you're seeking, but when that application opens in January by March 3rd. And then these are just the district coordinators. Hopefully these names are familiar to you guys. And I'm going to pop over to the questions box to answer a few questions that are coming in. So definitely keep putting your questions in there, and I'm happy to spend the next 18 minutes going over those. If I don't get to your question, I will get to your question, and it'll come through over email. So if I don't answer your question now, I either need a few seconds or I need some more time to answer it, or if we run out of time. Okay, a question came through. Can shoes be considered for safety? A few districts I work in are with underserved students that lack the appropriate attire to walk or bike to school, which hinders participation. This question actually comes up quite a lot. Unfortunately, we're not able to provide funding for shoes. We're also not allowed to provide funding for things like hats or t-shirts if they're not, if they're not providing any sort of educational or safety related benefit. We can't provide that funding for giveaways. But it's not to say that that's not an important part of your program. If there's other ways to work with local organizations or, get donations, that's sometimes how people will try to overcome that, to still try to provide those resources, but just, using other means to do it. Another question, our plan was completed in 2013. Is there guidance on what an update entails? Great question. I actually didn't put that on a slide, so really good question. We have an overview document on how to update your school travel plan, what needs to be updated. We'd like these to be updated every 5 years, and The extent of the update just really depends on how different your existing conditions are today versus when the plan was completed. So a couple examples of things that might lend itself to a slightly more major update would be if your schools have relocated, which would open up a whole nother, potential like geography of projects. If you feel like the staffs and partners that were involved in developing your plan and really overseeing its implementation, if there's been like a lot of turnover and not a lot of people who were there when the plan was developed are still there, that might be another good reason to kind of do a little bit more of an overhaul, potentially, to pull in partners and make sure that you're reflecting the current needs of the community and you're outlining projects that those partners are, have the ability to advance. And then, for some communities, if not a lot has changed, if your schools are in the same location, if a lot of your partners are, still in place, it might depend on if you've sort of completed any projects. And so your update process might be marking the projects that were completed, reprioritizing the projects that are left, taking that back out to the community to ensure that, these recommendations align with what the community wants. That might be sort of what your update process looks like in that case. So just a few thoughts, but we do have a resource dedicated to helping you understand what type of updates you need to do. Okay. Oops. All right, I'm just reading some of these questions. Can the funding for bikes be used for the maintenance of the bikes? Do they have to be used bikes or can they be bought brand new? We don't have very specific guidance on the bikes. You could purchase them used, you could purchase them new. It could be appropriate for a small part of your budget to relate to maintaining the bikes. Yeah, I think you would just have to sort of present a reasonable budget, and if we had any concerns or comments, we could talk to you about, how much of your project is associated with maintaining the bicycles. But you could include some maintenance if you needed to within your budget. Okay, question for clarification. In the first part of the presentation, the planning documents include a local comprehensive plan or a long-range transportation plan. Then in the application requirements, only the STP and AT plans are listed. Are the first two plan types considered equivalent? Yes. So any of those plans, a local comprehensive plan, a long-range transportation plan, a school travel plan, an active transportation plan, or anything that is somewhat equivalent, anything that is engaging the community, identifying priorities, anything that is outlining infrastructure and non-infrastructure approaches and up to date within 5 years could be used to become eligible for Safe Routes to School. What entity can apply for the school travel plan funds? Good question. This would be, okay, so this is about who can be the applicant for the school travel plan development assistance. That could be any local political subdivision and potentially nonprofits with a compelling reason and strong letter of support from local government and school. What is the minimum application score needed to be competitive based on past years? Interesting. I might have to get back to that one. What is the minimum application score? Yeah, I don't know that we have necessarily a minimum application score, but I mean, in general, a lot of times it's all relative. Like if we get a lot of applications, you have to score pretty high to, make the cut. So I don't think we have a hard number, but I might need to put in a fuller answer to that one. All right, let's see what else we got here. Got 10 minutes left.
Kate, there was I don't know if you got to this, but there was a question that came in at 113. If you scroll back up, where can we find the current travel plan assistance application? I did not find it on the web. So if
Oh
you
yeah,
start up there, yeah.
yeah, and I did cover that. So once you navigate to the Safe Routes to School page, you'll go to apply, you'll click on Safe Routes to School application links, and then you'll see it right there. Okay. Okay, so keep your questions coming in. I'm actually going to show you some FAQs that I've been getting over the past few weeks, as well as some that I usually get every year. So definitely still put in your questions, but I'm just going to cover a couple other questions that I've assembled. So I've gotten a few questions from people. Do I need to update my school travel plan to be K through 12? And I think the reason why people are asking this is because the program is now allowing projects for students K through 12. But this doesn't mean you have to do that. You don't have to update your school travel plan. Your plan doesn't have to include students K through 12. It's totally up to you. These are plans for locals by locals to meet your needs, so just know that that's totally up to you. If you have some, you would only be able to apply for a project that was identified in a plan, so you couldn't necessarily apply for a project that would impact a high school that was 9 through 12 because that likely wasn't covered in your school travel plan. So yeah, the only reason why you would want to update it is if you were interested in including more schools and assessing the environment around more schools. So totally up to you. Actually, another question just came in. Can Safe Routes to School and TAP funds be used together? For example, acquisition is not allowable in TAP, but it is allowed in Safe Routes to School. Yes, this is possible. So TAP funds, so ODOT's Transportation Alternative Program, that funds bicycle and pedestrian projects outside of metropolitan areas, only provides funding for construction. It's possible to get, engineering, design, funding from Safe Routes to School and combine that with TAP funding for construction if you wanted to. It's been done before. I actually think acquisition is allowed in TAP. Like I think you can acquire right of way as part of a TAP project, just as a caveat. But yes, this can happen. We do coordinate our projects pretty closely across programs. So those are also conversations we might have. Like if you put in a project into TAP, that might actually be a pretty good Safe Routes to School application. There's a chance it gets funded that way, and vice versa. If there's a project that comes in through Safe Routes to School, and it's a great bike ped project, but we just don't see the student impact, we might flag that for TAP to say, hey, take a look at this. So we do try to coordinate on that. I usually get questions about if I apply for school travel plan funding, can I hire my own consultant? Yes, you can. The only kind of caveat to be aware of is if their like fee is going to be over $50,000, or if the cost of the work is going to be over $50,000, because this is federal money, it needs to go through a federally qualified selection process. So just something to be aware of. And then lastly, I usually get questions about, charter schools and private schools. So, in general, public, nonprofit charter schools could apply. Private, we don't reimburse funding to private entities. However, this doesn't mean that we couldn't build a sidewalk on like the property of a private school. We would just need to make sure that the project was open to the public 24/7. So there might be a little bit more paperwork. They might need to, sign a maintenance agreement or donate the land to the community. It's not impossible for us to, build a project there. It just requires a little bit more paperwork to make sure that it's accessible at all times. Same thing with school property. We can build sidewalks on school property. There's a couple ways we can do this. The school board might need to be a co-sponsor. They could take on the maintenance, or they could, donate it to the local jurisdiction, and who would then become the maintenance authority. Are there limits on who can have a Safe Routes to School coordinator? Not really. Anybody could apply to have a Safe Routes to School coordinator. We definitely would, prioritize funding for this type of position for somebody who is serving more schools. But again, there's a lot of flexibility to, put together a project that's going to meet your needs and build your case. So you can definitely do that. I think I already answered this question about, can nonprofits apply? They can. We like to sort of build capacity within local government entities, but we certainly know that there may be situations where this is a better fit. A few other questions. I've been asked before, can an agency receive more than one non-infrastructure award? So no, you wouldn't be able to be awarded twice to support programming in the same jurisdiction. However, the same jurisdiction could apply for infrastructure and non-infrastructure at the same time for the same jurisdiction. Probably a last call to the audience. If you have a question, get it in. I've got a few more here, but we're coming close on time. Okay. So there's no pre-qualification for hiring a consultant. Again, you would just have to do a quality-based selection if it's over $50,000. I've been asked before if school travel plan development, does the funding awarded for reimbursement have to go to like a planning and engineering company, or could it be awarded to other agencies or partners that can adequately conduct the work? So this is totally up to you at the local level. You would have to front the money for that work, and then you would invoice ODOT to be reimbursed. So there's no money going from us to whoever you're working with. So as long as you've hired someone who can conduct the work, you could submit for reimbursement. Oh, and then for those of you who are planning to submit projects and maybe you need some mapping assistance, get us those requests in as soon as possible. Like if you've got student data and you need maps and you're going to ask ODOT for help, send those to me as soon as possible. We like to try to turn those around in 2 to 3 weeks, but sometimes we have quite a lot of requests coming in and we can get kind of bogged down. Please get them in by February 1st if you're looking to attach those to an application, but if you know now, send them now and we can just sort of start chipping away at them. All right, I'll check the questions box one last time. If I missed you, I will go through these questions after the call, and you can find the answers in the LTAP follow-up email. Otherwise, with no other questions, thank you so much for attending. Please feel free to reach out to me or your district Safe Routes to School coordinator for other questions, and good luck getting ready for applications.
Thanks, Kate. Everyone have a good evening or afternoon.
Thanks.